Welcome to Hearts of Iron 4. Get ready to purge your officers, forget to escalate the war in China, and become a Nazi.
You didn't ask for this. You didn't choose this.
You can call me Ezekiel. This is Hearts of Iron 4. Let's jump in.
Okay? You're worse than Hitler!
Too late for flattery.
Pick a country. Any country. No, not that one. It's big. Much better. Each country has a focus tree. It's pretty much a choose-your-own-adventure book that affects how the game plays out. Most trees also include alternate history branches, but we'll talk about those later. On the top of your screen, you'll see a row of numbers. They represent political power, which is spent on modifying your government and activating decisions. Stability and war support, which do a bunch of things, but obviously you'll want them to be high. If either one is low while you're at war, very bad things can happen. Manpower is how many troops you have to staff your military. This is how many factories you have. We'll get into how they work in a bit. Fuel is how much fuel your country has stored. You gain fuel from the oil resource. Convoys is how many ships you have to transport troops and resources. And last are command power and military experience, which we'll cover later. This is the laws and government screen. You use it to change your laws and staff your government. Only raise your conscription law when you need more manpower. When it comes to trade policy, free trade is the best. It has big productivity bonuses, as well as a huge research boost. Feel free to change your trade policy if you find yourself low on resources. In regards to economy law, you want to get to total mobilization as soon as possible. Don't worry about the recruitable population penalty. You can just cancel it out with the women in the workforce decision. Each country has an ideology. You can use advisors to help change it. If two countries share an ideology, they'll have an easier time engaging in diplomacy. Let's talk about that.
I have been talking with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler, and I have in my hand a piece of shit.
Cut it. Neville! Neville!
In Hearts of Iron 4, there's nothing unusual about basic diplomacy. Make an offer and hope they say yes. A more interesting diplomatic feature is world tension. It's closely tied to the focus trees. Fascist countries can usually do whatever they want. However, doing naughty things raises the world tension. As certain tension thresholds are met, the democracies will get access to their more powerful focuses. This dynamic means that the fascists will get ahead early game, but as the tension goes up, the democracies will catch up and then surpass them. Like the other Paradox games, you need a casus belli before you can start a war. While you can fabricate one manually, most focus trees give you any casus bellis you might need. You can also never declare war and just join a faction that's already at war. Factions are group alliances. They're usually formed along ideological lines, with non-aligned countries joining the democratic factions. If one faction member goes to war, the rest of the faction is very likely to follow them. Wars don't end until every major power in a faction has capitulated. To win a war, you'll need weapons. Lots of them.
Faster! They need more shells! Faster! Faster! Shells! Shells! More shells! Faster! 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 They need more shells! Faster! 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 They need more shells!
At the center of the economy are buildings, and the most important kind of buildings are factories. The first kind are civilian factories. Civilian factories build more buildings. That's big, so you'll want to build nothing but civilian factories for the first few years of the game. Another important building type is infrastructure. Infrastructure does a lot of things, but one of the most important is to extract more resources. Many states produce resources. If you build infrastructure in one of these states, it'll produce even more resources. This can be very valuable in industry-poor but resource-rich countries like Romania. If you find yourself needing more resources than you have, you can import the difference. You trade one civilian factory to another country for 8 units of a resource. But you can get a better ratio if you're importing from one of your puppets. If there's no land connection between you and your trade partner, you'll need convoys to transport the resources. Dockyards and military factories, which are the other two types of factories, turn your resources into war materials. These include guns, tanks, ships, and those disgusting potato-flavored chocolate bars. Military factories have something called production efficiency. This is basically how good the factory is at producing something. When a factory starts production, it'll have low production efficiency. As time goes on, this will improve. If you change what a factory produces, this process will start all over again. The products of military factories are used by divisions. Let's talk about them.
Ah, damn it! Want something done right? Don't have to do it yourself. Come on, girls! We're going on a queer hunt!
The army is made out of divisions. These are important, so we're going in depth with them. A division is made out of battalions and support companies. Battalions determine the vast majority of the division's stats, while support companies provide unique bonuses like reconnaissance. The physical placement of a battalion in the division doesn't do anything. As long as it's in the division, it'll do its job. Here's what you need to know about stats. Unless something has gone horribly wrong, divisions never get destroyed. Instead, they retreat. This only happens when their organization reaches 0. That makes organization the most important stat to consider when making a division. Soft attack is how much damage the division does to soft targets like infantry. Hard attack is how much damage it does to hard targets like tanks. Defense is a bit odd. Just know that the higher the number is, the better the division will be at defending. Infantry have a lot of defense, so if you need a line held, infantry will be your friend. Breakthrough does the same thing as defense, but it comes into play when attacking. Tanks have a lot of breakthrough, so when you want to attack, try to do it with tank divisions. Armor is how well armored the division is. Generally speaking, more and heavier tanks means more armor. If an enemy division can't pierce your division, it'll suffer some serious penalties. The piercing stat determines how much armor a division can pierce. Last is combat width. All you need to know is that unless you're doing something really fancy, your combat width should always be 10, 20, or 40, with 40 being best. You can see what equipment a division needs on the right. Here are the divisions I use. This is the classic 7-2. It's not as strong as it was when the game launched, but it still gets the job done. This is the 14-4. It's literally just a 7-2 but doubled in size. However, due to weird mechanics I don't fully understand, making a division double the size makes it much more than 2 times stronger. This is a shovel division. It's kind of awful at attacking, but extremely cost effective on the defensive, especially when it's had time to entrench. We'll talk about how entrenchment works in a bit. This is an anti-rebel cavalry division. Unless you're Poland, these guys won't see much fighting. They're best used to suppress rebels, which rise up in occupied territories. To make the rebels, disappear, just set a few of these divisions to garrison the trouble spots. Here's a good 40 width tank division. There's no point in having a 20 width tank division. Notice how there are no leg infantry, only motorized infantry. This is because a division moves as fast as its slowest unit, and you always want to keep tank divisions moving. Feel free to slide in SPGs, SPAAs, and tank destroyers as needed. If you want something overpowered and also kinda dumb, throw a heavy tank or 2 into an infantry division. Due to the way the game calculates armor, it acts as though every single infantryman is wearing tank armor. This means that if the enemy wants to kill basic infantry, they'll have to use anti-tank guns. Now for actually controlling your troops. Divisions are organized into armies, and armies are organized into army groups. Each army has a general, and each army group has a field marshal. These commanders give bonuses to their divisions. You can upgrade the commanders here. Some countries can field hundreds of divisions and have to manage them across multiple fronts. Manually controlling every single one would be a bit ridiculous. That's what the battle planner is for. The battle planner can be used to execute plans by army, or if you really have a lot of divisions, by army group. To make a battle plan, you create a front line. This will distribute the divisions along the front. You can then make attack plans for the troops to execute on. Just remember that the battle plan AI isn't that smart, so you should micro your divisions to get the most out of them. Think of the battle planner as more of a big picture thing, and you as the details guy. Even if you want to totally ignore the battle planner, always make battle plans for your armies. Regardless of whether you actually use the plan, divisions assigned to a plan will build up planning bonus, which makes them more effective when attacking. On the other side of that coin, if a division is standing around not doing anything, it'll entrench itself, which makes it more effective when defending. When a division tries to move into a province controlled by a hostile division, a battle will begin. If the defender reaches 0 organization, it'll be forced off the province and the attacker will move in. If the attacker reaches 0 organization, it'll stop attacking. Divisions recover their organization when not in combat. If you're facing stiff resistance, you can use a trick called cycling. This is where you have multiple divisions on a tile and only attack with a few at a time. Since the enemy is constantly in combat, they'll never recover their organization, while some of your divisions will always be recovering theirs. You can see how much organization and equipment a division has via the green and orange bars. If you need an extra boost, Hearts of Iron 4 features special orders which you can use to temporarily buff your troops. They're very gamey though, so I don't like using them. If you find yourself drowning in so many divisions that even army groups can't help you, you can split your armies into theaters. You can see how each theater is performing from its combat log. It includes all sorts of fun stats. Alright, that's it for the army. Up next... Luckily, the Air Force is a lot simpler. You create air wings for each type of airplane in airports. You assign your wings to do missions in air zones. If a wing can't cover the whole zone, it'll be less effective. Different types of planes perform different missions. Fighters fight for air superiority and intercept enemy bombers. Close air support dive bomb enemy divisions who are in combat. These can do tons of damage. Strategic bombers bomb enemy factories and infrastructure. They can also do this. I think we got him. Naval bombers bomb ships, and tactical bombers do a little bit of everything, but not as well as dedicated bombers. There are aircraft carrier versions of fighters, close air support, and naval bombers. Speaking of carriers,
Yes, you can sail the seven seas. Yes, you can put your mind at ease. Come on, people, and let's stand. Can't you see we need a hand?
with Man the Guns, fleets have gotten a lot of attention. You assign ships to task forces, and task forces to fleets. All task forces in a fleet share an admiral and operate in the same sea zones, but they can each perform different tasks. Naval combat comes in two parts: finding the enemy and then actually fighting them. Heavy ships like battleships and aircraft carriers are fuel guzzlers. You don't want them patrolling for enemies. This means that your combat fleet should be split into two task forces: patrols made of light ships to find the enemy, and strike forces made of heavy ships to blow them up. Fleets can also do other things, including convoy raiding, which is best done with submarines, convoy escort, which is best done with anti-submarine destroyers, lay and sweep for mines, which is best done with mine-laying and mine-sweeping destroyers, and naval invasion support, which is best done with big ships to provide the best security and shore bombardments. Up next is experience, technology, and doctrines.
Step up your game.
Hitler.
Break out the L word.
Lesbian?
The other L word.
Lebensraum.
The Army, Navy, and Air Force each have their own experience. You get experience by fighting or doing exercises. Experience can be spent on a few things, but Army experience is particularly important because it's used to customize divisions. Something that all experience can do is customize equipment. Army experience can customize tanks. When upgrading tanks, armor is most important, unless you know the enemy will penetrate it anyway, in which case just invest in the guns. Air experience can be used to upgrade planes. For fighters, engines matter the most because they give agility. For bombers, close air support, and other air-to-ground units, attack and bombing matter the most. Naval experience can be spent on customizing ships. The Navy has what is by far the most advanced editor, and the same hull can be used to create radically different designs. Another use for experience is to speed up doctrine research. You research doctrines, as well as other technology, using your research slots. Doctrines buff the Army, Navy, and Air Force, but you can only have one doctrine for each branch. The land doctrines are tanks, infantry with heavy gun support, kind of all over the place, but the entrenchment bonus is good, and also all over the place, but best for small countries that need as much manpower as possible. The air doctrines are fighters and strategic bombers, close air support, and all over the place. And the naval doctrines are battleships, convoy raiding, and aircraft carriers. Before we get into the meta stuff like DLC and mods, I want to give an overview of my favorite countries in the game and the United States. First is
Gott erhalte Franz den Kaiser, unseren guten Kaiser Franz.
Why Hungary? Because it's great for new players. It's big enough that it can have an influence, but not so big that you'll be totally overwhelmed. Hungary is also landlocked, so you won't have to worry about navy mechanics, which can be confusing at times. I doubly recommend Hungary if you have Death or Dishonor, since then it can do cool stuff like restore Austria-Hungary, but even vanilla Hungary is fine.
Springtime for Hitler and Germany. Winter for Poland and France.
Germany's the opposite of a good country for new players. It's big, has no strong allies to rely on, and is basically the driving force behind the whole game. That's a lot of pressure, although once you're ready for it, it'll probably end up being your favorite country to play. Germany is very well suited for a tank-focused mobile war game, where big encirclements are the goal. Unless the AI does something truly incompetent, there's really no other way to play Germany. You have to beat France and the Soviet Union quickly, or you'll just get outproduced. Speaking of losing, I'd like to add that even losing as Germany can be fun. Desperately trying to resist the Allies in the West while barely holding on in the East is a great challenge. Plus, if you lose, you won't have to think of the consequences of a Nazi-dominated world.
In victory now for the Italy. Show no mercy, slaughter them like people know they're fighting advocates. We're really good, those kids. Hitler, oh please help us now, my pants are soaked in piss.
If you want to try your hand at the naval side of the game, Italy is a great country to learn it with. Italian industry kinda sucks, except for its dockyards. On land, you'll always be overshadowed by Germany, but that's not what matters. If you can wrestle control of the Mediterranean from France and Great Britain, your otherwise weak army will be able to pull off all sorts of crazy maneuvers.
Roses are red, violets are blue. I'm stuck on the Eastern Front. And so are fucking you!
If one word describes the USSR, it's preparation. The fascists are coming, and you need to be ready. There's nothing more intense than seeing all the armies of Europe line up against your border and hoping that whatever you did to prepare was enough. Failure to properly prepare means a struggle to the death, where your only hope of survival is an Allied landing. Success, on the other hand, means your boys will be in Berlin by Christmas. Or, whatever the communists celebrate.
I surrender!
I once listened to the Hearts of Iron 4 developers discuss their design challenges. One of their most interesting challenges was that fascists have all the fun. There's a certain amount of truth to this. Countries like the USSR spend half the game just waiting around. Others have a more interesting experience. France is in a precarious position. It'll never be fully prepared for the German invasion, but it can get close. If you play your cards right, you can turn the Western Front into another trench warfare hellscape. By doing so, the Germans will slowly but surely get crushed by the combined industry of the French and British empires. Watching the German war machine spontaneously stop at your fort line can be quite hilarious. Nowhere is the problem of fascists have all the fun more pronounced than in the United States of America. This isn't a country about preparation and execution, it's about waiting. Lots and lots of waiting. In an effort to make things interesting, the United States features Congress mechanics. But the way it's implemented, Congress is basically just random chance. There is an alternative to Congress, and that's in fighting an alternate history Second Civil War. But that's kinda dumb. I'm sorry, the South isn't rising again in the 1930s, especially with, wait, you need to elect a Republican to do that? A Republican? In 1936? You know what, let's talk about the DLC and mods. I feel like we'll find something better there.
Hans, are we the baddies?
Now for the DLC. Together for Victory gives focus trees to the Commonwealth. That's Canada, South Africa, Australia, the British Raj, and New Zealand. Death or Dishonor does the same thing, but for Hungary, Romania, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. Waking the Tiger focuses on Japan, Germany, and China, but also includes a bunch of mechanics changes. Last is Man the Guns, which massively improves the Navy mechanics and messes with the United States, United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and for some reason Mexico. A paragraph ago, I mentioned that the alternate history in this game can be kinda dumb. Even though a good amount of it's pretty fun, there are much better options out there. This is where the mods come in. Let me tell you, out of any Paradox game, Hearts of Iron 4 has the best mods. It has mods for World War I, Modern Day, and even Fallout, but there's one mod that is by far my favorite. Kaiserreich is amazing. It's a What If Germany won World War I mod, but it's so well developed that it's practically its own universe. In this timeline, it wasn't Russia that fell to communism, it was the West. After a humiliating defeat in the First World War, Britain and France collapse and become syndicalist states. The British royal family and the French Republic have been exiled to the colonies, leaving a barely held together Germany to fight the syndicalists. But that's about to get a whole lot harder, seeing as the Berlin stock market, the center of the world economy, is about to crash. Hell, this mod is so good, it finds a way to make playing the United States interesting. Very, very interesting. So yeah, that was Hearts of Iron 4. Feel free to ask any questions you have in the comments, I'll get back to you pretty quick. Up next, we'll learn how to play Mountain Blade. In space! See ya then.
I will drink from your skull! The higher, right in the Führer's face. Not to love the Führer is a great disgrace. So the higher, right in the Führer's face. When Herr Goebbels says we own the world in space.